Woo! Woo! Nadia, look, eye contact to him. You've always put fans at the heart of work. From Manchester to eSports, what's the most surprising thing you've learned from listening to fans?
Okay, so the most surprising thing I've learned from fans, I think the thing that I've learned over years of working with fans and working with community groups around things like EA Sports FIFA is it's relatively basic, right? They're all humans, and they have relatively sort of basic needs around that. And the core that I would say is they just want to be heard. You know, they've invested money, they've invested time with you as a business, a brand, a football club. They want to be recognised around that. They want to be valued. So if they have a view around how the brand or the business should evolve, my advice to anyone working in that field would be to listen. And if there's a world where for some reason you can't listen, you can't action their feedback or what they want from you, my advice would be to address it directly, to have a conversation with them, to be transparent for your socials or even face to face in a human way. But it's relatively basic. It's just engage with them, listen, and make them feel heard. You know, and that's what I've learned through my career working with fans and customers.
What strategies helped you adapt global campaigns to resonate with diverse cultures and audiences?
Okay, so I've used a number of strategies and tactics to appeal to global audiences, but also find ways to engage local cultures. Probably the best examples of my time working on EA Sports FIFA, where clearly we were launching a game globally. It's football, so it obviously appeals to people across the world, but the language of football and the culture of football differs by region and by country. So if I was making a big global ad with my team, we would use talent as a way to localize and give different cultures ways in. So for example, in the US and Canada, we would have often non-footballing talent like Drake and Snoop Dogg that would roll in because it would give maybe a more accessible entry point to that audience. For edits that would play out in Europe and UK, Germany, etc.
Like a conductor. Huh?
Correct, exactly right. And we would take out maybe the non-footballing talent and we'd roll in the likes of the Lewandowskis for the Polish and German market at the time. We would roll in the Gareth Bales at the time, and for the UK market, the Welsh market, and he had some appeal across broader EU as well. And of course we'd always have Messi or Cristiano Ronaldo to have a big global voice in those spots. But there's another level, okay, so which is I would call hyperlocal marketing, whereby hey, that's the big global assets, but how do you actually penetrate the different cultures, speak the language of football, show up in a way that's authentic to them? And we would often have local teams that would create events and experiences that would be more using local influencers, using local venues and using the local language of football that would drive appeal in a different way. So those two levels put together typically would create that global appeal, but also give that local relevance that would drive the audience base and engage them.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, and now if you talk about progress over perfection, what does that mean to you in the world of marketing?
Well, it's a phrase I've used my whole career, and I think look, marketers we're an interesting bunch, and you come into it and you have an eye for detail and you want to achieve great goals, you want to do the best thing you can for your brand and your customer base. But the reality with the world, the way that tech evolves, the way the audience trends evolve, there is no idea of perfection. It's impossible. Any marketer looks at their campaigns and they see things they could have done better, and it kind of eats you up. So it's a phrase I use particularly for younger marketers who may be a little bit daunted by this idea of brilliant campaigns, and it's like the only thing that actually matters is moving forward. And it doesn't matter if within moving forward, if you fail, that's still progress, okay? And then you can turn that failure or that learning into better, best in industry, that kind of thing. So I find as a phrase, it kind of removes pressure and creates opportunity for people to learn, to grow, and ultimately do great work, which I think marketers want to do.
I understand, yeah. So perfection itself, it sounds like a bit utopian, but if you move, I mean, you can build something great.
Yeah, of course. but the idea of, it's an impossible idea, perfection, right? But when you come into these, particularly the Nikes of this world, EA Sports, FIFA, Manchester United, enormous standards in these clubs and in these institutions. But so the idea of reaching those standards are impossible. So it's all about striving. It's all about improving and having that mentality. And if you have, if you look at athletes or you look at marketers that are, in their younger years, as I said, it's a daunting idea. It's an impossibility that you can ever reach those standards. And let me tell you, the best athletes in the world and the best marketers in the world, they don't ever believe they've reached perfection. There was always a chance you missed. There was always something that didn't quite work within a brilliant campaign. So there's always opportunities to learn, grow, etc. And I think younger marketers don't always see that because they just see the big shiny stuff. I think sometimes younger athletes don't see that because they just see the standards set by some of the the greatest athletes of all time. So yeah.
Okay, now you can take it off. Is it hot or fine?
It's all right. So cool.
Wait a minute,
cool me down.
Just in here. So how was your experience with an eagle? How does it fly? How does it feel?
Terrifying.
Terrifying, really.
Yeah.
Like a dinosaur.
It's the talons. Those talons.
You feel?
Yeah. And I was worried he would peck me.
A mentor once told you, detach yourself from the work. Don't take feedback as personal. How did this advice shape your leadership style?
Yeah, interesting. That was very early in my career. This lady called Susie Smith. She was a brilliant leader and manager. And she could see every time marketers have to put themselves out there quite a lot. Here's my creative, here's my website, here's my plan. And you're always subject to feedback or, from various departments, right? Everyone has a point of view. And when you're younger, particularly when I was younger, I would be so passionate about the work that I would take any feedback personally, like it was a personal attack about myself. It absolutely wasn't, right? The feedback's intended to improve the work or to give us the right perspective. So she could see that. She could see I would receive feedback, I'd become really red and, just wasn't really, become defensive, etc. And I was young and, really passionate about it all. And like I said, it really, it was impacting the work out the back of it because maybe I wasn't taking it in. So she sat me down and said, it's not about you. It's like you need to separate. The idea of Matt McKie and the idea of your marketing plan are two separate ideas. And that really changed the way that I was interacting with different departments around the business and, being open to improve, the idea of improving work through feedback. And it shaped my leadership style because now that I'm, in Susie's position that she was in when she gave me that feedback, I can see younger marketers reacting exactly as I did when they present their work and that they take it really personally and, they're not really receiving the feedback in the right spirit, which is obviously blocking progress. So, I can see I can pass on that same feedback, but I can also just be aware of my presence and how my feedback might impact how they're feeling. So really, really important piece of feedback because it could have derailed my career because obviously if you're being defensive and you're not listening to people around you, experts, different departments.
You're getting too heavy, just
of course
blocking others.
Yeah, and then the work's not going to get to the
progress
where it needs to get to, exactly.
You led the What Agnes Saw campaign, connecting a 100-year-old champ with a 13-year-old Olympian. Wow. What made you believe this story would resonate with a global audience?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. We actually won a sports Emmy for that campaign. So I'm particularly proud. I know the team, the production company, Dirty Robbers, are really, really proud of it. I think that the world was in a weird time during the Tokyo Games. We were just coming out of COVID. The world was somewhat divided by politics. It was divided by ideas around COVID and vaccines and whatnot. And we really believed in the idea of the Olympics as kind of a unifying force. So we wanted to remind people around the power of the Olympics to bring people together, to heal divides between nations or between people that maybe disagree. And we used Agnes Keleti because she was the oldest living Olympic champion. Okay, and she's 100 years old, so we could tell the story of the Olympic Games over a 100-year period, and what the Olympics had done to further sort of women's empowerment and women's participation, what it had done around Jesse Owens at I think the 1938 Berlin Games, when the world was in a very tricky place.
Actually, you captured the modern history. How many, like 4 or 5 generations?
Correct, exactly. But the storytelling we could do around how the Olympics had, modernized sport, how it brought the world together was quite incredible. And the end of the spot, we handed off to Sky Brown, who became the youngest ever GB athlete. She's a skateboarder. She won bronze at the at the
It's a
Games.
new type of sports joint Olympics.
Correct.
Yeah.
So again, it further showed the progression of the games and bringing different subcultures and communities to this. So really, really proud of it. And it did it. It played in the opening ceremony. So it played to a couple of billion of people, right? I think it was 2 to 3 billion that watched the opening ceremony at that time. So, you know, and we won the Emmy, which is kind of a proof point around, you know, how people felt about its power and bringing people together. So really, really proud of it.
Big
Agnes,
moment.
Of course, it was
Emotional, big emotional.
As I say, anyone that has a film going to the opening ceremony of the Olympics is obviously going to be proud, and then to win such a big award for it as well was really good. But more important than all of that, it did play a role in bringing pride and bringing hope and bringing a sense of togetherness back to the world, as did the Olympic Games, as the torch was lit and, you know, sports commenced.
Yeah, great. Matt, you've used marketing to push for social change.
Yeah.
What's one campaign you are most proud of because of its real-world impact?
So the activity that I was most proud about in my career, and I say activity because it was bigger than a campaign, it was about product development, it's about what we did with the game on EA Sports FIFA. Back when I joined the organisation in 2013, I was really passionate about putting women's football in the game. I've always been a big supporter of the women's football. The moment in my career that I was most proud about, and I say moment because it's bigger than a campaign, it was about product development. It was about what we did with the EA Sports FIFA game. It's when we put women's football in there in FIFA 16. When I joined the company in 2013, I was really passionate about including women's football. I've always been a big advocate of the game for all of the companies I've worked at, but specifically at EA, I felt like we had a responsibility, and a lot of my co-workers and the executives felt like we had a responsibility to include women's football.
What was the situation with the women in sport at that time? Like, what age they quit? I mean,
yeah, I mean, look, there's broad challenges in women's sport, okay, and women dropping out, and typically it's anywhere between, you know, 12 and 16 where we see the massive drop-off rates, and many reasons for it: societal pressures, like lack of representation in the media, so not feeling included. And we really felt like we had a role to play, being a leading sports franchise, one of the biggest entertainment franchises in the world, to further that agenda, you know, and put them on a platform and in the limelight. So in FIFA 16, we did include them. And the reason I'm so proud of it is there was no commercial outcome that we were expecting. We knew that putting it in at that time was not going to pay back. It was a long-term play, and it was also about our brand and our values as a franchise and an organization. So yeah, often when, you know, big companies do things, even if it's seeking a purpose, they expect a commercial return. But we didn't have that expectation at that time. And I think when we launched the assets to tell people we were putting women's football in the game, those assets got 6 billion impressions around the world, because it was such an important moment in women's sport, but obviously importantly women's football. The whole world was talking about this inclusion. Of course, it created some diversiveness, and of course it divided opinion in some corners, but again, it was important to be having those conversations and to bring people that were maybe cynical about the sport to the table, to actually educate them that these are world-class athletes. You know, it's different to men's football, but in a good way, in a positive way. The same reason, the same way that men's and women's tennis is different in a positive way. So really, really proud of the impact we had on the industry, and the team have actually gone on to include the WSL, so the elite football in the UK, into the game now.
ooh, llama.
Okay, I'm going to take a photo of this guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll do a selfie of him.
Yeah, for your kids, what do you think?
Hey, don't ignore me, boy. Hey,
Kissing you?
do they spit, these guys?
They can spit. Oh, he looks lovely. Look at him. Such a funny eyes.
Perfect. It's aspirational to your careers. But look, I think the key piece of advice I would give is, and I spoke about it yesterday, it's about being curious, okay? Because if you want to inspire a human, you need to understand that human. You need to understand their context. You need to understand their beliefs. You need to understand their social scenario. You need to understand where they live. Okay,
Their lives.
Their lives. So you can put together, whether that's communication or product or a film or a social strategy, whatever the thing you're putting together, it all starts from understanding. It all starts from a place of curiosity. And I mean really on a human level, understanding your audience. And if you do that, it will lead you towards inspiration. It will lead you towards creating communications that pull your audience closer. And look, ultimately, that will sell. That will sell products, but it's an outcome. What you want to be doing is inspiring, creating emotion, etc.
Matt, looks like this is a Manchester fan.
Yeah, I saw. Yeah.
Official support club.
Yeah.
From Almaty. Yes.
Yeah.
United of Almaty.
Amazing.
It will be great for our Instagram.
Yeah, do it. Let's do it. Yeah.
Wait a minute. This Paul. Так, ребята, сразу для соцсетей же лучше, да?
Да.
Smile. Так.
Нормально видно?
Да, ну смотри, проверь.
One and done.
Прикольно. Давайте.
Yeah. Easy. Done. And you have a contact with the club?
What's the concept?
We have a guy called Rick McGar that looks after all of the fan clubs around the world. Do you guys have contacts? Or do you?
We're official on that.
Yeah, fine, okay.
Thank you so much for your time. It
Yeah.
was very interesting conversation.
I loved it. Thank you, man.
Все, мы закончили?
Take a photo.
One second photo. With me? Which? Yeah. Maybe because I look like Beckham.
Kok Tobe? Mama, you put him in mask.
Why did you want a photo? Because it thinks I look like David Beckham.
It's a joke.
Oh, you were joking? I was going to say that.